Maya Johnson had always known that behind every polished facade, there often lay an unspoken truth. Born into affluence as the only child of Winston Johnson, one of the most successful black CEOs in the corporate world, Maya's life was a delicate balancing act between privilege and responsibility. Although surrounded by luxury and influence, Maya was determined that her life would be defined by her own choices rather than her father's formidable name. On the surface, the prestigious company that bore her father's dominant presence was a haven of innovation, teamwork, and success. But Maya had heard whispers in the corridors, murmurs of discontent around work ethics and hidden office politics. It was during one restless summer that Maya, driven by a desire both for truth and for personal growth, hatched a bold plan. She would go undercover, taking on the role of a cleaner, to test the very employees her father had trusted unconditionally for years. With a fierce determination burning in her heart, Maya meticulously spent weeks preparing for her task. Ditching her usual array of designer apparel in favor of a modest uniform and a set of Spartan cleaning supplies, she stepped into the sanitized corridors of the corporate headquarters as a quiet, unassuming presence. The compound, the beating heart of innovation in a polished high-rise, suddenly took on a new dimension for her. It was not only a testament to business might and technological advancement, but also an environment where everyday human frailty and ambition intertwined in unexpected ways. Her first day was an exercise in keen observation. With her eyes lowered and a humble smile fixed upon her lips, she navigated hallways and corridors, systematically absorbing every detail, the hurried whispers in break rooms, the secretive glances shared among colleagues, and even the subtle yet distinct hierarchy that governed interactions between employees. In the halcyon early days of her undercover role, Maya meticulously followed the everyday schedule, sweeping floors, dusting surfaces, and disposing of debris, while absorbing the underlying narrative unfolding around her. It wasn't long before she encountered Jamal, a mid-level manager whose confidence bordered on arrogance. Jamal seemed convinced of his indispensability, and his every word dripped with a sense of superiority. Yet, in a quiet moment, Maya noticed how the gleam of ambition in his eyes masked a latent insecurity. Little did he know that the woman softly pushing his office chair aside as she mopped the tile floor had become his silent observer and, potentially, the judge of his destiny. Across the building, Elena, an administrative assistant, maintained a cheery demeanor, greeting everyone with a bright smile. While many assumed Elena's sunny personality was the centerpiece of the office morale, Maya carefully observed the subtle power dynamics at play. Elena often found herself caught in the middle of disputes between departments. During coffee breaks, casual chatter would often veer into discussions of office favoritism, leading Maya to suspect that Elena's outward positivity served as a coping mechanism for larger structural injustices that afflicted the workplace. In the ensuing days, as Maya continued her mission, she found herself entangled in a labyrinthine web of betrayal, ambition, compassion, and cruelty, all bustling beneath the veneer of corporate order. Slowly, behind every corner of the building, unfolded stories that defied conventional expectations. One such story was that of Terence, a diligent engineer whose dedication to his craft had earned him both admiration and envy among his peers. His meticulous nature was shadowed by a bubbling resentment over being continually overlooked for promotions. But amid these turbulent emotions lay a deep-seated desire for fairness and recognition. Maya often found herself pausing near his workstation, observing Terence as he wrestled with complex designs and the relentless pressures of meeting deadlines. His expressive eyes revealed a blend of burning passion for innovation and the silent agony of workplace injustice. Maya's compassion for Terence grew, and despite her secret mission, she began to see him as more than just another employee on her evaluation list. The days flowed into weeks, each one unspooling a chapter of discovery and heartbreak. The company, renowned for its eclectic mix of talent, was also home to deep-seated rivalries. In hushed tones, employees spoke of hidden agendas, strategic sabotage, and fierce competition for not only promotions but also for personal recognition. Maya's undercover presence made her privy to these confessions, conversations that would often take place when the office lights dimmed and personal vulnerabilities emerged. One cloudy evening, while she was polishing the mahogany surfaces in one of the conference rooms, she overheard a heart-wrenching conversation between two senior executives. Their voices trembled with a mix of regret and anger as they recounted how decisions had been manipulated for personal gain. The crook of corporate intrigue inside the company was not just confined to contracts and numbers, it was a saga woven out of ambition, broken promises, and the loss of humanity in the corporate race. In a moment of unexpected clarity, Maya recalled the countless times she had felt invisible in her own shadow, always defined by the accomplishments of her father. But now, in the quiet solitude of her undercover existence, she discovered an inner voice, one that echoed the ideals of truth, fairness, and justice. She resolved that the findings of her investigation would not merely be a tally of missteps for the sake of myopic corporate purges. Instead, if change was to be wrought, it must be driven by the transformation of a flawed system. Days turned into nights as Maya juggled her disguise with the weight of her discoveries. She began to document every interaction and every subtle nuance of behavior among employees, compiling an extensive dossier that would eventually serve as the basis for her final judgment. Every encounter she had, even those as seemingly insignificant as a whispered word or a fleeting glance, accumulated into a mosaic of human ambition, frailty, and perhaps even redemption. Not everyone, however, was oblivious to Maya's unique presence. A perceptive young man named Corey, always seen hustling between meetings with keen eyes and restless energy, began to suspect that the new cleaner was no ordinary employee. Corey, who had evolved in the ranks through sheer determination and had recently been considered for a leadership role, became curious about Maya's background. Every time he passed her in the hallway, he sensed an inner fortitude that belied the modest role she played. Corey's discreet inquiries with colleagues yielded only vague hints and sudden changes of tone whenever Maya was mentioned. The atmosphere of the workplace deepened into a conspiracy of quiet suspicion, and even when Maya remained silent, her every action resonated with a measured determination to seek the truth. As the investigation progressed, Maya began to engage with employees on a more personal level. During moments of downtime, as she rested on a bench near the office's atrium, Maya struck up conversations that were both gentle and incisive. With each dialogue, she gleaned insights into the personal struggles and untapped aspirations that lay hidden behind professionally composed exteriors. One rainy afternoon, while the city outside pulsed with the melancholy of autumn, she encountered Anthony. Anthony was an unassuming custodian who carried an aura of quiet dignity. Despite his humble position in the company, he possessed a wisdom born of years of observation and a deep empathy for his fellow workers. Anthony's narrative was one of perseverance. He had grown up in the inner city, fought against adversity, and clung to the belief that every person, regardless of status, was entitled to a life of respect and dignity. His quiet stories revealed that the company's true heartbeat lay not in the boardroom decisions or quarterly earnings, but in the shared humanity of those who built it brick by brick. In the midst of her covert operations, Maya encountered interpersonal collisions that further deepened the complexity of her task. One fateful morning, she witnessed a bitter exchange between two rival team leads over a seemingly trivial oversight, a misplaced document that, in the fiery tempers of these leaders, became the catalyst for an all-out war. The confrontation escalated quickly, drawing the attention of several bystanders whose faces then morphed into masks of shock and dismay. Maya, who was quietly mopping the floor not far away, absorbed every nuance of the quarrel. The bitterness was palpable in the air, mingling with the aroma of disinfectant and stale coffee. In that volatile moment, the true cost of ambition became glaringly evident. Under pressure, even the most dedicated workers could become blinded by pride and vengeance. That incident crystallized Maya's sense of duty. If the system allowed such incendiary conflicts to fester, then the very soul of the company was at risk of being devoured by its own internal strife. Between the clandestine meetings in dim corridors and heartfelt exchanges during break periods, Maya began forming alliances with those who truly believed in the values she espoused. There was Lisa, a seasoned HR professional whose integrity had remained intact despite years of compound cynicism. Lisa confided in Maya about the internal policies that had been manipulated over the years, and about how the company's true potential was marred by due complacency among high-ranking executives. With each whispered disclosure, Maya's resolve solidified further. To bring about meaningful change, it was not enough to expose isolated missteps. A comprehensive overhaul was required, one that would restore honor and accountability to every echelon of the organization. Even as Maya connected with the underrepresented voices and the overlooked heroes of everyday existence, the environment around her grew increasingly fraught with tension. Rumors spread like wildfire that a mysterious auditor was systematically gathering evidence for a radical shake-up of the company. Coffee breaks became replete with anxious banter, employees exchanged furtive glances in the hallways, and even the air seemed charged with the static energy of anticipation. Among those most affected was Jamal, whose earlier arrogance slowly gave way to paranoia. As the days grew longer, the tension forced him into reckless decisions that betrayed his once solid composure. The whispered conversations in hushed corners turned critical, each employee intuitively aware that if the system was to be purified of its impurities, then none could hide from the sweeping forces of accountability. In one of the most emotionally charged moments of her covert venture, Maya encountered a scene that would forever alter her understanding of loyalty and leadership. One cool, shadowed evening, she found herself alone in a rarely frequented section of the building when she stumbled upon a group of employees gathered in a small, dim room. The room was filled with histories, photographs, personal mementos, and carefully curated relics of a time when genuine camaraderie reigned. The group's discussion was raw and honest, recounting times when they had been treated like family rather than mere cogs in a giant machine. There was a palpable sense of loss as they recounted how the company had gradually sacrificed its soul in pursuit of market share and profit. Even as Maya listened with a heavy heart, she recognized the strength in their collective vulnerability. This unexpected encounter reminded Maya that any effort to right the wrongs of the company had to delve beyond mere punitive measures. Genuine change required understanding, and sometimes, the most difficult truths emerged in moments of sincere confessions. As weeks bled into days, the magnitude of Maya's findings grew. In a painstakingly compiled notebook, she recorded every incident of mismanagement, every whisper of betrayal, every glimmer of hope that dared to rise amidst adversity. With the dossier in hand, Maya faced an agonizing decision. Her mission, which began as an experiment to test the integrity of those around her, had transformed into a moral crusade for justice. However, the consequences would be far-reaching. Kindergarten-style measures such as randomly firing employees would not suffice. Instead, she resolved to implement a reckoning that would reverberate throughout the organization, forcing every individual to reevaluate where they stood in the battle between self-interest and collective integrity. Among the most complicated dilemmas was deciding the fate of Jamal. His once impeccable image had been marred by evidence of orchestrated sabotage and covert manipulations that jeopardized not only the company's reputation but also the well-being of its workforce. Although the truth was hard to swallow, Maya knew that punitive action, even if it broke hearts, was necessary. She reasoned that if leaders like Jamal were allowed to persist unchecked, the entire structure of the organization would crumble. Yet, there was another facet to his character that could not be ignored. Beneath the layers of arrogance, Jamal's subtle hints of regret and vulnerability revealed a man caught in the relentless tides of ambition, a man who, perhaps, only longed for recognition and fearlessly coveted success. But justice could not be swayed by sentiment. The painful necessity of accountability loomed large, and it was a lesson that Maya intended to impart harshly. In tandem with Jamal's increasingly erratic behavior, another figure emerged as a symbol of transformative potential, Terrence. The engineer, whose daily struggles had been a quiet testament to his fortitude, had animated a spark of change in the hearts of his colleagues. It was Terrence who had often exchanged meaningful glances with colleagues in the break room, signaling that their shared frustrations might someday coalesce into meaningful dialogue. Maya recognized Terence not as a mere statistic in her dossier but as the embodiment of both the company's potential for renewal and the promise of a brighter future. She resolved that Terence would be a cornerstone of the new order, a symbol that redemption and reform were not only possible but the only way forward. As the days came to a crescendo, rumors of a purge began to swirl. Employees whispered that their fates would soon be decided, some expressed dread while others cynically accepted that the so-called cleansing was inevitable. The atmosphere grew punctuated with both anxiety and anticipation, and no one was oblivious to the mounting reckoning. Maya listened from the shadows, quietly observing as cliques formed and alliances shattered in the face of uncertainty. Even the silent, dependable Anthony seemed to carry a burden far heavier than his modest role would suggest. When he exchanged his daily salutations with co-workers, there was a sorrowful glint in his eyes that spoke of years trying to serve a system slowly strangled by corruption. In the midst of these typical office dramas, Maya continued her work with a painful detachment that masked an internal struggle. Every piece of evidence she uncovered added weight to her decision, and every conversation filled her with conflicting feelings of hope for personal redemption and despair at the scale of corporate malpractice. Late one evening, while the moon hung low and the building wore the solemn shroud of night, Maya sat in a secluded corner of the premises. Surrounded by the silence of unoccupied corridors and the hum of distant machinery, she wondered whether the change that was needed was truly within her power to spark. In that solitary moment, Maya questioned if the pursuit of accountability might come at the cost of dismantling a system that had, in its own way, provided solace to thousands of employees who had found not just a job but a semblance of identity within its walls. The day of reckoning came unexpectedly. Early one crisp morning, just as the city stirred awake, the boardroom began filling with nervous energy. Without forewarning, Maya's meticulously prepared dossier was handed over to the company's top executives. The paper, filled with documented transgressions and heartfelt testimonies, was like a loaded cannon poised to change the trajectory of the company. Shock rippled through the upper echelons. Some executives, including those who had long enjoyed untouchable power, could not believe their worst suspicions were being confirmed. Others, like Lisa from HR, felt relief tinged with apprehension, knowing that the revelations would finally dismantle an entrenched system of favoritism and neglect. But above all, Maya knew that a storm had been unleashed, a tempest that would clear away the old order to open the path for a future crafted with integrity and fairness. Within hours, the internal communications exploded, emergency meetings were convened, and whispers of mass firings turned into definitive orders. Employees found themselves unceremoniously facing the consequences of their actions. The once buzzing hallways became silent testimonies to broken trust, punctuated only by the distant sound of hurried footsteps and muffled sobs. Shock quickly gave way to anger, disbelief, and, in some heartbreaking instances, outright despair. The purge was swift and unforgiving. One by one, names were read aloud with the finality of a gavel strike on a condemned sentence. Jamal, whose once commanding presence had now disintegrated into regretful silence, faced the ultimate price of unchecked ambition. With the issuance of termination letters, the company's golden veneer was slowly stripped away to reveal the raw, tumultuous reality beneath. In the midst of this corporate maelstrom, Terence emerged as the unexpected hero. While many of his colleagues were disillusioned by the cascade of firings, Terence became a beacon of the transformative change the system so desperately needed. His quiet perseverance and commitment to genuine innovation had not only survived the purge but also inspired a newfound sense of resolve among the remaining employees. Maya, who was now unburdened from her covert role, approached Terence with mixed feelings of admiration and deep sorrow. In hushed voices exchanged between empty cubicles, they discussed how the painful process of accountability would eventually pave the way for a reformed culture, one where talent, ethical conduct, and the collective well-being of every employee were prioritized over power and profit. The aftermath of the purge was marked by a painful reconstruction. The corridors, once vibrant with the rhythm of daily routines, now echoed with a tempered silence. As the dust settled, remaining employees gathered in small groups to piece together what would become the new foundation of the company. Under the scrutinizing gaze of the board and with Terence at the helm of the reform committee, new policies were drafted. Every detail was painstakingly examined, starting from the ground up. The lessons gleaned from those turbulent days led to sweeping changes. Where once favoritism and nepotism held sway, new guidelines aimed at transparency, accountability, and equal opportunity were rigorously imprinted into the company's bylaws. For some, these measures were a welcome promise of a just future; for others, a bitter reminder that the system they had once trusted was irreparably broken. Maya continued to work among her former colleagues, now with her cover lifted, speaking openly about everything she had witnessed. Her bold decision to blend into the ranks as an unassuming cleaner had come at great personal cost, but it also acted as a catalyst for a far larger movement. In her heartfelt interviews with employees who were left traumatized by the sudden purges, Maya listened intently as they recounted their struggles and aspirations. Her interviews gave voice to those long silenced by corporate hierarchy, a chorus of pleas for a fairer, more nurturing environment where every individual's worth was acknowledged. Amid the precarious balance of hope and recovery, Maya's own journey took on a redemptive quality. She realized that while the purge had been painful, it was also a necessary step for a healthy future. A future where every employee, regardless of tenure or status, was given the opportunity to contribute positively and to be acknowledged for their true potential. In the weeks that followed, the office underwent a metamorphosis. The change was not instantaneous, and friction still existed among those attempting to navigate this new landscape. Yet, there was an unmistakable undercurrent of optimism, a belief that the turbulent storm had cleared the way for a more transparent and just working environment. Meetings were now brimming with healthy debate, and even disagreements were approached with mutual respect and a genuine desire for collaborative healing. Terence, now at the center of the reformation, rolled out mentorship programs, ensuring that the wisdom of veteran employees would be harnessed to guide the younger generation toward a balanced understanding of both ambition and empathy. His vision was clear: a company where integrity was the driving force, and where every employee was treated with the dignity they deserved. Despite the momentum of change, Maya's own emotional journey was far from over. Amid the structural overhauls and the fervor for accountability, she found herself grappling with personal questions. Maya's undercover experience forced her to confront long-held notions about authority, rebellion, love, and forgiveness. The isolation of her secret mission had ensnared her in moments of loneliness and self-doubt. Late at night, alone in her modest apartment away from the gleaming skyscrapers of her father's empire, she questioned whether her actions had been too drastic, or if the repercussions, both personal and organizational, were indeed the price of genuine progress. But every time these doubts crept in, Maya recalled the stories she had gathered from fellow employees, the dreams deferred, the quiet ambitions, the hard-earned wisdom of peers like Anthony, Lisa, and Terence. Their voices resonated in her mind, slowly dispelling the shadows of second thoughts and reaffirming that true change always comes with moments of discomfort and sacrifice. As the company steadily moved toward a renewed identity, whispers of Maya's dangerous experiment began circulating beyond the office walls. The media soon caught wind of the mysterious cleaner who had turned the corporate world upside down, and as the story spread, it ignited heated debates in boardrooms and living rooms alike. People debated the morality of such a covert intervention. Was it justified to sacrifice relationships and careers to expose systemic flaws? Or did Maya's actions represent a brave reclamation of truth, a necessary incursion into the heart of corporate corruption? Public opinion was split, but one fact remained indisputable: the scandal had reshaped the company's public image and, more importantly, forced a long-needed conversation about ethical leadership and corporate accountability. While some decried the method as reckless, others hailed Maya as an unsung heroine, a courageous voice that dared disrupt a stagnant system for the greater good. Through it all, Maya persisted with a quiet dignity and an unwavering commitment to the principles she held dear. In the ensuing months, as the company rebuilt and re-energized, there were moments of cathartic reckoning. Former colleagues who had been ousted were given a chance to speak out about their experiences. In intimate interviews broadcast on national television, employees recounted how the toxicity of the old system had stifled their creativity, drained their potential, and sown discord among friends. Their stories were raw and unfiltered, marked by tears and trembling voices, but they carried a powerful message of resilience. Inspired by the courage of those who had risked everything by coming forward, Maya initiated town hall meetings that brought together every facet of the company. These meetings became transformative forums where grievances were aired openly and the company's future was debated with passionate sincerity. Instead of being a space of repression, the town halls became crucibles for a new kind of leadership, one that acknowledged mistakes, embraced diversity, and strove for continuous improvement. Amid these challenging times, Maya also discovered unexpected love. In one quiet moment during a late-night meeting intended to draft new policies, she found herself drawn to Corey, whose quiet intensity and unwavering commitment to ethical behavior had first sparked his suspicions about her true identity. Their connection blossomed slowly, nurtured by shared experiences and a mutual recognition of the sacrifices required to challenge the status quo. Corey, who had long been an observer of the system's inequities, finally found a partner who understood the weight of responsibility that came with trying to mend a fractured world. Their love was understated yet profound, a bond forged in the furnace of adversity and tempered by the purity of shared ambitions. In whispered conversations over cups of lukewarm coffee in deserted corridors, Corey and Maya spoke of their dreams of a fairer future, both for the company and for the individuals who had borne the brunt of its failures. Even as new policies took root and a fragile sense of balance returned, there remained pockets of resistance among those who had grown too comfortable in their positions of privilege. A small but vocal group, led by a disillusioned executive whose career had been dismantled by the purge, sought to undermine the reforms. Their attempts at sabotage were subtle but dangerous, a covert campaign of misinformation aimed at destabilizing the newfound unity. However, the seeds of accountability had already been sown too deeply. Terrence's Reform Committee, with the support of Lisa and other dedicated allies, worked tirelessly to counteract these undermining efforts. Slowly but surely, the destructive faction was isolated, and their influence dwindled as the majority embraced the promise of a reformed future. The process was far from painless. Passionate debates and occasional tension marred the otherwise hopeful progress. But in the crucible of these struggles, a new corporate culture was emerging, a culture that valued honest, difficult conversations over silent acceptance, where the notion of justice was not a mere catchphrase but a lived reality in every meeting and every memo. As the final vestiges of the old regime faded, Maya was called upon to present a reflective account of her undercover journey before the company's revamped board. In a packed auditorium, filled with faces both remorseful and resolute, she stood as a symbol of the transformative power of truth. With measured words and a calm intensity, Maya recounted her experiences from the perspective of an ordinary cleaner who had witnessed extraordinary injustice. Her words resonated deeply, stirring emotions that went beyond corporate metrics and quarterly reports. Instead, they touched on a shared yearning for dignity, fairness, and accountability that transcended the boundaries of profit and loss statements. The presentation was not merely an account of systemic failure, but also a call for introspection, a plea to every employee to look within and consider how each act, however small, could contribute to a larger tapestry of integrity. In the days following the presentation, the company experienced an unexpected renaissance. The reformed policies, education programs on ethical leadership, and open channels for employee feedback drove a renewed sense of camaraderie and purpose. Even those who had suffered the brunt of the purge gradually found solace in the prospect of rebuilding their careers from a foundation based on mutual respect and unwavering honesty. Winston Johnson, Maya's father and the architect of an empire that had now endured profound transformation, publicly acknowledged the need for systemic overhaul. His acceptance of responsibility, coupled with his uncharacteristic humility, signaled to the nation that even the mightiest institutions could evolve when faced with the courage of truth. Though deeply pained by the revelations and the personal losses it entailed, Winston recognized that the legacy he had built could only be honored by fostering an environment that nurtured not just wealth, but humanity. In a poignant moment of reconciliation, Maya met with those she had once been forced to judge from behind the guise of anonymity, the employees whose turbulent journeys had etched deep impressions on her soul. Over gentle coffee and quiet reflections in a humble café away from the gleaming towers of corporate power, they conversed about the difficulties they had endured. Some expressed regret and sorrow while others, like Terence and Anthony, spoke of lessons learned and hard-won insights that would guide them forward. The meetings were far from easy, laden with the weight of memories and the scars of betrayal. Nevertheless, they marked the beginning of a dialogue that transcended mere apologies or punitive measures. They were the first true steps toward healing and rebuilding trust. In the soft light of a recovering afternoon, as the city outside resumed its steady rhythm, a quiet promise was made, that every voice would be valued and every person given a second chance to redefine their path. As the months turned into a full year of transformative recovery, the impact of Maya's undercover experiment continued to be felt. The company's turnover rate declined as new programs in employee support and leadership mentoring were rolled out. There was a renewed emphasis on transparency and accountability in decision-making, and the shattered dreams of the past slowly metamorphosed into the building blocks of a promising future. While the scars of the tumultuous purge remained, they now served as solemn reminders of the arduous journey toward justice. Each setback and every moment of anger was repurposed as an opportunity for growth, a catalyst to propel the company forward with newfound resilience and a shared commitment to ethical values. Maya, once in disguise as the silence sweeping through corridors, now emerged as a respected mediator, a symbol of fortitude who had bridged the gap between humility and power. Her journey, which had begun as an audacious experiment, culminated in the realization that change was not always a product of punitive measures but sometimes of empathetic understanding. In a serene interview for the company's newly established magazine, she remarked that the true legacy of any organization was the culture it cultivated, and that sometimes, the greatest breakthroughs occurred when one dared to look beneath the surface. Her measured tone, imbued with hard-earned wisdom and compassion, resonated far beyond the boardroom. It reached every corner of the company where individuals dared to dream of a better tomorrow. The reverberations of Maya's revelations extended even to those who had once staunchly defended the old ways. Even the embittered executive who had sought to sabotage the reform eventually found himself confronting the consequences of his actions. In a quiet yet profound moment of self-realization, he acknowledged that his attempts to cling to a bygone era were futile. His public apology, delivered with genuine remorse and regret, was not an attempt to erase the damage of the past but a humble step toward rebuilding the bridges that had been so carelessly burned. His acknowledgement was met with mixed reactions, a blend of skepticism, forgiveness, and cautious optimism, as the company collectively navigated the treacherous terrain of healing. Within the corridors of the newly reformed company, each day bore a silent promise that the errors of the past would serve as lasting lessons for the future. Terence's leadership, bolstered by a spirit of genuine camaraderie and the solidarity of dedicated colleagues, laid the blueprint for a new company culture, one that emphasized integrity, respect, and continuous self-improvement. Lisa's initiatives in reshaping HR practices ensured that every employee, regardless of their rank or tenure, was given an equal opportunity to voice their concerns and contribute to the evolution of the organizational ethos. And in quiet corners of the once oppressive building, Anthony continued his daily tasks, his gentle smile now a mark of resilience as he quietly celebrated the subtle victories of everyday life. The story of Maya's undercover experiment became more than a corporate scandal, it evolved into a legend told for years to come. In town halls, in coffee shops, and even at family dinner tables, the tale of how the daughter of a mighty CEO disguised herself as a humble cleaner to unearth the truth and compel transformation resonated with audiences from all walks of life. It was retold in hushed tones as a reminder that power, even when cloaked in impenetrable authority, could crumble in the face of genuine accountability and that every individual, regardless of circumstance, held the potential to spark change. The narrative transcended the confines of corporate boardrooms and seeped into the broader cultural consciousness, igniting conversations about leadership, integrity, and the essential dignity owed to every worker in any institution. In a culminating moment of reflection, Maya sat one sunset on the balcony of her modest apartment, gazing out at a city whose skyline had, unbeknownst to her as a child, been shaped by the very company that was now reinventing itself. The hues of orange and purple merging into twilight mirrored the fusion of her dual identities, the privileged daughter of a corporate titan and the determined warrior of change. In that meditative silence, she acknowledged the sacrifices, the heartbreaks, and the unexpected moments of love that had colored her journey. The answer to her burning question had emerged from the very crucible of hardship. True progress was never free from pain, but the painful truth bore within it the seeds for a more equitable future. And so, as the final chapter of this turbulent saga closed, the company that had once been defined by power struggles and hidden sabotage was reborn in the light of accountability and hope. Maya's unyielding determination, tempered by empathy and guided by a quest for justice, had unwittingly reshaped the destiny not only of a single institution but of all those who dared to believe that change, even when wrought through unconventional means, could lead to a brighter tomorrow. With each passing day, as tradition gave way to innovation and cynicism was supplanted by sincere collaboration, the new culture of the company began to mirror the ideals Maya had always envisioned, a tapestry of diverse voices united by a shared commitment to honor, fairness, and unwavering integrity. In the end, what began as a desperate experiment by a sheltered daughter yearning for authenticity blossomed into a monumental journey of self-discovery, reconciliation, and transformation. The quiet corridors of the corporate building now rang with renewed purpose and respect, echoing the whispered legacy of a single brave soul who had dared to venture beneath the glossy surface to uncover the truth. No longer would employees merely navigate the labyrinth of office politics with resigned silence. They stood poised to forge a future where the worth of every individual was recognized and where the promise of change was not just a distant echo but a living, breathing reality, a planning, nurturing, and inclusive culture built on the bedrock of accountability and love. And as the company celebrated 1 year of its renaissance, the story of Maya's undercover crusade lived on in every decision, every policy, and every heartfelt conversation that followed. It served as a timeless reminder that sometimes, the most transformative victories are won not through grand proclamations, but via the humble determination of a single individual who refused to accept injustice. The legacy of her journey continued to guide the next generation of leaders, inspiring them to confront wrongdoing with courage, to seek truth amidst the swirling mists of power, and to embrace the inevitable hardships that accompany genuine progress. Maya's daring experiment, which at first glance seemed like an act of mere mischief, proved to be the catalyst for a profound reckoning, a flexing of moral will that reshaped not only the structures of a company but also the social fabric of an entire community. And so it was that in the twilight of one era and the dawn of another, an unassuming cleaner, the daughter of a black CEO, left an indelible imprint on the hearts of those who sought to forge a better, fairer world. Her story, laden with twists and turns, sorrow and redemption, continues to be recounted as an enduring chronicle of what can be accomplished when one dares to stand up for truth in the face of overwhelming odds. With the new policies now firmly in place and a culture of accountability taking root in every office nook and corridor, the organization found itself on a path toward not only rebuilding lost trust but also nurturing a dynamic environment where every employee was empowered to contribute uniquely and meaningfully. In the lively debates that ensued during weekly meetings and the spirited brainstorming sessions that replaced the stale routines of old, the spirit of innovation was revived. Every individual, from the seasoned veteran to the newest recruit, participated with a fervor untainted by the shadows of the past. The purge, although painful, had unlocked a door to a future built on love, respect, and a foundational belief in the transformative power of honesty. As time marched on, the echoes of Maya's courageous endeavor began to shape narratives far beyond the ensconced walls of the company headquarters. Other organizations, inspired by the transformative example set by Maya and her allies, began to re-examine their own cultures. Corporate watchdogs, media outlets, and industry experts praised the reformed company as a paradigm of how accountability and empathy could coexist with business success. In boardrooms and at academic conferences, Maya's daring mission was dissected, analyzed, and celebrated as a case study in the importance of ethical leadership. Through her initiative, the ripple effects of social justice began to infuse not only professional environments but also community structures that had long been confined to formal, hierarchical models of operation.